Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my YouTube channel. You guys, I really want to thank you for following my tutorials. I managed to reach 1,000 subscribers yesterday. I couldn't reach this far without your support. Continue to support me. We need our family to grow. Tell your friends about this channel so that you all pass with flying colors. Today we'll revise recent combined science paper 2 that was written last year. You know, all along I've been looking for this paper. An angel brought this paper to my inbox. He just gave me paper 2, N1 with paper 1 of combined science, November 2022. Kindly share to my WhatsApp number. As usual, we are going to divide our paper into 4 series, section A to section D. I do this so that I have more time to emphasize on each and every section so that you understand combined science better. Today we are going to revise section A of combined science paper 2 that was written in November 2022. Candidates are required to answer all the questions in this section in the spaces provided on the question paper. Fig 1.1 shows a diagram of a specialized cell. So in number 1, part 1, we are supposed to identify the cell that is in Fig 1.1. So our key word here is specialized cell. And not so many candidates failed this question because they are going to just say it is a plant cell. You are not going to get any mark if you say this is a plant cell because here we are told that this is a specialized cell. So first I'm going to explain what a specialized plant cell. These are plant cells that have components that allow them to complete a specific purpose. So in plant cells, the examples of specialized cell, we have root hair cells, palisade cells, xylem cells, and phloem cells. So in our answer here, we are going to write that this is a palisade cell. And then let us move on to part 2. We are supposed to state the function performed by the cell shown in Fig 1.1. So palisade cell is the site of photosynthesis. You can see that it is containing these chloroplasts, which carries out the process of photosynthesis. So we are going to write that palisade cells are the site of photosynthesis. And then on part 3, we are supposed to name the part labeled X. It is known as vacuum. Let us move on to the next question. And then on part B, we are supposed to describe what happens to the glucose and oxygen that is made in the flower. So glucose is going to be used throughout the plant for growth, flower formation, and fruit development. And then oxygen is going to be released or exhaled from the leaves. Let us move on to part C, part 1. We are supposed to give one function of guard cells. So first I'm going to explain what are guard cells. These are kidney-shaped cells that surround the stomata. They control the opening and closing of the stomata. Let me draw it so that you just have an idea of how guard cells look like. Let us move on to part 2. We are supposed to explain how guard cells are adapted for the function stated in part 1. So in part 2, we are supposed to explain how guard cells are adapted to opening and closing of the stomata. They are adapted by being able to change their shape. When water enters guard cells, they become taged, resulting in opening of the stomata. When water exits from the guard cells, they become flaccid, resulting in closing of stomata. So that was all about number 1. I'm going to summarize the answers on number 1 before we go to number 2. So on number 1, this cell is known as palisade cell, and then on part 2, the function of palisade cell is that it is the major site of photosynthesis, and then the part labeled X is known as vacuole. And then on part B, we're supposed to describe what happens to the glucose and oxygen made in a leaf. So glucose is going to be used throughout the plant for growth, flower formation, and fruit development. Oxygen is going to be released or exhaled from the leaves. And then the function of the guard cells is to control the opening and closing of stomata. And then they are able to change their shape. When water enters them, they become turgid, resulting in opening of the stomata. When water exits, they become flaccid, resulting in the closing of the stomata. So that was all about number 1. Let us move on to number 2. Number 2A, name 2 female sex hormones. I'm going to list all of them. There are 4 main female sex hormones. So we have follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, estrogen, and progesterone. I've listed the 4 main female sex hormones. In this question, candidates were required to answer to give N2 female sex hormones. So here I've just listed all of them, but in the exam, candidates were required to just write 2 of the female sex hormones. Let us move on to the next question. And then on part B, we are supposed to describe the role of hormones named in A in the menstrual cycle. First, I will need to explain what is menstrual cycle so that we understand. So menstrual cycle is known as kumwedzi in Shona. It is the process by which woman's body prepares for pregnancy. So after menstruation, that is the bleeding that occurs in the vagina of a woman, we first have the follicle stimulating hormone that is going to stimulate the growth of eggs in the ovaries. At that phase of follicle stimulating hormone stimulating the growth of eggs in the ovaries, we also have the hormone estrogen that is going to help stimulate the growth of egg follicle. So this process of the growth of eggs is going to happen from day 1 to day 12. From day 12 to day 14 of the menstrual cycle, the egg needs to be released from the ovaries. So there is a hormone that is going to stimulate the release of the egg from the ovaries. This hormone is known as luteinizing hormone. So the process of the release of the eggs from the ovaries is known as ovulation. So luteinizing hormone also stimulates the release of progesterone after ovulation by corpus luteum. So after ovulation, we have the estrogen and progesterone working. The estrogen is going to enhance and maintain the mucous membrane that lines the uterus, and then the progesterone works by thickening the uterus lining and creating a good environment for a fertilized egg to implant. On C part 1, we are supposed to define the term ovulation. So ovulation is the release of an egg from the ovaries. And then on part 2, we are supposed to state the range of days of the menstrual cycle when sexual intercourse is mostly likely to result in pregnancy. So this is 12 to 14 days after menstruation. That was all about number 2. I'm going to summarize my answers so that you understand the concepts. So on number 2, we're supposed to name 2 female sex hormones. I've listed all the main female sex hormones, which are follicle-stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, estrogen, and progesterone. So candidates were required to answer any 2 from the list I've listed above. And then on part B, candidates were supposed to describe the roles of the hormones named in A in the menstrual cycle. So this is what I've done. I've summarized all the hormones so that you understand the concept, because menstrual cycle is a bit tricky to men. So first, I've explained what is menstrual cycle. It is the process by which woman's body prepares for pregnancy. After menstruation, that is the bleeding that occurs in woman's body. The follicle-stimulating hormone is going to stimulate the growth of eggs in the ovaries. It is going to do this with the help of estrogen also, which is going to help stimulate the growth of egg follicle. And then after, in the day 12 to 14, the egg that was produced, it is supposed to be released from the ovaries. So the hormone that is going to stimulate that release is known as luteinizing hormone. So that luteinizing hormone is going also to stimulate the release of progesterone after ovulation by corpus luteum. And then after ovulation, we are going to have estrogen and progesterone working together to maintain the mucous membrane that lines the uterus. And also, the progesterone is going to create a good environment for the fertilized egg to implant. And then on C part 1, we are supposed to define the term ovulation, which is the release of the egg from the ovary. And then on part 2, we are supposed to state the range of days of the menstrual cycle when sexual intercourse is most likely to result in pregnancy. So it is 12 to 14 days after menstruation. Let us move on to number 3, which is a question on chemistry. Number 3A, we are supposed to state N2 processes which can be used to support the kinetic theory. First, I'm going to explain what is kinetic theory. Kinetic theory states that matter is made up of small particles that are moving constantly. So the process that is used to support kinetic theory, we have Brownian movement, and also we have diffusion. So this question is just requiring us to state, by doing this you obtain all your marks. But I'm going to explain what is Brownian motion so that you understand. The Brownian motion is the random movement of particles that are suspended in fluid or gas, resulting from their collision with fast-moving atoms or molecules in the gas or liquid. And then you know diffusion, it is the movement of gases or molecules from the region of their higher concentration to region of their lower concentration down a concentration gradient. And then on part B, it is reading, when a gas is compressed, state the property which is going to increase. So you should know that during the compression, the volume of gas is going to decrease, whilst the density of gas is going to increase as the mass remains in constant. So the question is requiring us to just state. So by just stating density, you are going to obtain your mark in B part 1. And then on B part 2, we are supposed to state the property that is going to decrease. So I have stated it before. It is the volume that is going to decrease. And then on part 3, we are supposed to explain why it is easier to compress a gas than a solid. It is easier to compress a gas than a solid because there is a lot of space between the gases and very less force of attraction between the molecules. So this space allows us to put pressure on gas and force in a small container. So this question is requiring us to explain. Make sure that you don't end on stating that there is a lot of space between gas molecules and very less force of attraction between the molecules. You need to go on further to explain why that property make it easier to compress a gas. So this space is going to allow us to put pressure on gas and force in a small container. That was all about number 3. I'm going to summarize the answers on number 3. So number 3A, you're supposed to state N2 processes which can be used to support the kinetic theory. We have Brownian motion, and also we have diffusion. And then when gas is compressed, the density is going to increase, while the volume decreases. And then on part 3, we are supposed to explain why it is easier to compress a gas than a solid. This is because there is a lot of space between gas molecules and very less force of attraction between the molecules. So this space allows us to put pressure on gas and force in a small container. Let us move on to number 4. Number 4 is reading. A science teacher orders iron, zinc, copper, and magnesium for use during laboratory practical lesson. From the ordered metals, state the one which reacts very slowly with air to form a greenish compound. So here our answer cannot be magnesium because magnesium reacts violently with oxygen since it is high in the reactive series. And also you should know that we can't select zinc and iron because zinc, it tarnishes in moist air to form zinc oxide. And then when iron is exposed to air, a reddish brown coating is going to be formed, which is known as rusting. So we are going to select our answer as copper. Copper is the one that reacts slowly with air because it is down in the reactive series. So here I need to explain to you guys where this greenish color is going to come from, because when we react copper with oxygen, copper oxide is going to be formed, but it is black in color. So this is what happens for us to obtain that greenish compound. Copper is going to corrode by oxidation, which reacts with oxygen in the air to form copper oxide. And then that copper oxide, it then combines with carbon dioxide to form copper carbonate, which is green in color. That is where we are obtaining that greenish compound. And then on part 2, we are supposed to select the one whose powder bends to form a yellow oxide when hot. We are going to select zinc as our answer on part 2. So let me explain where we are going to obtain that yellow oxide when hot. So this is what happens. Zinc oxide undergo a reversible change in color when heated. This property is known as thermochromic. It changes from white to yellow when heated, and then it reverts to white when it is cooled down. And then on part 3, we are supposed to select a metal which bends easily to form a white solid. Our answer is going to be magnesium. Magnesium reacts with oxygen to form magnesium oxide, which is white solid. And then on part B, we are supposed to arrange the 4 metals in the order of decreasing reactivity. So magnesium is the most reactive, followed by zinc, followed by iron, and lastly copper. You should know the reactivity series because questions on reactivity series, they are examined frequently. So make sure that you master the reactivity series. You know which metal is more reactive than the other. Let us move on to the next question. Let us move on to part C. We are supposed to explain why an iron nail placed in copper sulfate solution becomes coated with copper. So iron is more reactive than copper. It is going to displace copper from the copper sulfate and forms a ferrous sulfate. And then the copper that was displaced is going to deposit around the nail. Let me summarize my answers in number 4. So on number 4A, we're supposed to state the metal that is going to react slowly with air to form a greenish compound. It is copper. And then powder is the one that is going to form, zinc is the one that is going to have the powder which burns to form a yellow oxide when hot. And then the one which burns easily to form white solid is magnesium. And then we are supposed to arrange the 4 metals in their order of decreasing reactivity. Magnesium is more reactive than zinc, and then zinc is more reactive than iron. Iron is more reactive than copper. And then we are supposed to explain why an iron nail placed in copper sulfate solution becomes coated with copper. So iron is more reactive than copper. It is going to displace copper from the copper sulfate, and then the copper that was displaced is going to deposit around the nail, forming a coat. So number 5A, we are supposed to state one difference between a petrol engine and a diesel engine. So here we are supposed to state the difference. So the first difference that I'm going to state is that the diesel engine, they work on diesel cycles, while the petrol engine, they work on the Otto cycle. Here we are supposed to state one difference, but I'm going to state other differences so that they will help you in your revision. So another difference is that in the diesel engine, the fuel is mixed with air inside the cylinder, while in petrol engine, air and fuel are mixed in carburetor. So another difference is that in diesel engine, there is high compression ratio, while in petrol engine, there is relatively low compression ratio. And then on part B, we are supposed to describe what happens during the power stroke of a petrol engine. So there is a very high voltage that is going to be created in the ignition coil. Spark plug enables this high voltage to be discharged into combustion chamber. The heat created by spark ignites the gases, creating rapidly expanding superheated gases that force the piston back down the cylinder bore. And then on part C, we are supposed to name N2 gases which are released in car exhaust fumes. We have got a lot of gases that are released in car exhaust fumes. These gases include carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, hydrocarbons, benzene, water vapor, and nitrogen oxide. So I'm going to list some of the gases, but in this question, candidates were required to just list 2 from the list that I'm going to write down. Let me summarize number 5. we're supposed to state one difference between a petrol engine and a diesel engine. So a petrol engine, they work in auto cycle, whilst diesel engine, they work on diesel cycle. And then air and fuel in petrol engine is mixed in carburetor, whilst in diesel engine it is mixed in cylinder. And then there is high compression ratio in sorry, I realized that I made a mistake when I was writing. We are having a high compression ratio in diesel engine and low compression ratio in petrol engine. And then on part B, we are supposed to describe what happens during the power stroke of a petrol engine. So there is a high voltage that is created in the ignition coil. The spark plug enables this high voltage to be discharged into combustion chamber, and then heat created ignites the gases, creating rapidly expanding superheated gases that force the piston back down the cylinder bore. And then on part C, we're supposed to name N2 gases which are released in car exhaust fumes. So there are so many gases that are released. These include carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, benzene, soot, and nitrogen. Let us move on to the final question, which is number 6. On number 6A, part 1, we are supposed to state N1 effect of force. So here we are just stating, we are not supposed to explain, but we are just going to state. So force, it can make the stationary object to move. For example, if you push a box at rest on table, bringing it into motion, that is an example of effect of force. And also, force can stop a moving object. Force also changes the shape or size of an object. There are so many effects of forces, but here I've just listed some of the effects of force. In the examination, candidates were just required to write in one of these effects. And then on a part 2, we are supposed to name the instrument that is used for measuring force. So we measure the force using a force gauge, also known as force meter. Let us move on to the next question. We are supposed to state the standard international or SI unit of force. So the SI unit of force is newtons. And then on part B, we are given a fig 6.1, which is showing an electric circuit in which a cell is used to light a bulb. We are supposed to construct an energy chain for fig 6.1. So when the bulb receives the electrical energy, it converts it into light and heat energy. Then it converts it into light and heat energy. So the transformation is, we are going to change from chemical energy to electrical energy, which is going to give us light plus heat energy. And then on C part 1, we are supposed to state N1 effect of energy. So energy is the ability to do work. So we need energy in order to heat and cool our homes, to light the office buildings. We need energy to drive the cars. We need energy in manufacturing the products. So these are some of the effects of energy. In the examination, candidates were required to state in one of these effects. And then on part 2, we are supposed to suggest one advantage of solar energy. So it is a renewable source of energy which is inexhaustible. It also reduces electricity bills. It has low maintenance costs. Let me summarize the answers on number 6. On number 6A, we are supposed to state one effect of force. So force makes stationary object to move, force stops a moving object, and also force changes the shape or size of an object. So candidates were required to just state one effect, and then the instrument that is used to measure force is known as force gauge. And then the SI unit of force is newtons. On part B, we are supposed to construct an energy chain that is going to happen when electric cell is used to light a bulb. So the chemical energy that is in the cell is going to be converted to electrical energy, which is going to be converted to light energy and heat energy. And then on C part 1, we're supposed to state N1 effect of energy. It is used to heat and cool our homes, lighting office buildings, driving cars, manufacturing products in industries. And then finally, we're supposed to suggest one advantage of solar energy. It is a renewable source of energy which is inexhaustible. It reduces electricity bills, and also it has low maintenance costs. So this marks the end of our tutorial today on section A of Combined Science that was written in November 2022. Thank you so much, guys, for following me on this channel. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share my videos. I love you all. This is Eve signing out.